Hello, welcome back. In the last session, we spoke about pronunciation or the value or importance of pronunciation in speaking. And as I had mentioned earlier, many Malaysians, we speak fairly well in English because we are a nation where English is a second language. And we learn it in school, at university, and so on and so forth, and at work. So we don't have major issues when we speak, as long as for us, what's important is that the message is given and that the listener understands what we want to say. However, I think the significance of the elements of pronunciation come into play in more formal settings, such as when you attend an interview, a job interview, for example, or when you are doing a presentation to clients or an audience, you're presenting at a conference. Yeah, so in those settings, even at a meeting with a client from or clients from other companies. So in those cases, we need to be very careful also about how we speak, and therefore our pronunciation comes into play. I think it's the same for writing. Sometimes we think that because we can speak already well, fairly well, we can write. That's not necessarily so, yeah. Writing is a different skill altogether, requires more thought and time, yeah. And writing is something that you can, once it's written on a page, you can just keep going back to it. But when you speak, most of the time, speech is spontaneous. So it's quite difficult to go back to what you've already said. Good speakers, though, are able to retract, or sometimes they backtrack and say, oh, I'm sorry, what I meant to say was this. So those are, quite good speakers or advanced speakers. But if we're not careful, we just, go on speaking, and then we lose the fluency. And so writing, as I said, is the same. You write, whether you write reports or emails, long emails, or if you're a student, you have to write, essays and so on. So written communication can also cause a lot of misunderstandings when you make errors, and errors can reflect your either carelessness or lack of attention to detail, and generally being incompetent. Well, it's the same with speaking. It's okay when we speak in very informal settings, yeah, like you're speaking to your friends or family members, at very, very informal situations or context. But very more formal situations, and most people at work, many days in the work are spent in rather formal context, unless you are doing some IT work or technology where you just sit in front of the computer and you don't have to talk to people. But the rest of us have to. So why is pronunciation important? I have mentioned this already. I also mentioned in the last session that there are about 13 main pronunciation features of Malaysian English, which are different from the standard English pronunciation, as some experts describe, such as Peter Roach. He's quite famous for speaking and pronunciation, and if you want to pick up a book on pronunciation or about all these important elements and features of pronunciation, you should pick up a book written by Peter Roach. We said that there are 13, and in the last session we covered 3. I'm not going to go through the other 10, but we will slowly get there, yeah. But today, I think in relation to that, I'm going to also touch on, there are differences between Malay and English speech. When we speak, yeah, and in Malaysia, you have to be able to speak Malay as well as English, yeah, and you learn Bahasa Melayu in school and so on and so forth. Anyway, there are differences between Bahasa Melayu pronunciation and English. One of the major differences between, Bahasa Malaysia or Bahasa Melayu and English is that, I'll say BM, yes, for short. BM has the same with English for, intonations like when you make a statement or ask a question or give a command or instruction. So there's this intonation, meaning the rise and fall. Yeah? So if you ask a question, you have to ask that it sounds like a question too. There's this rising intonation. So you say, where did you go last night? Yeah, that's a question. Awak pergi mana semalam? There's an intonation as well. Yeah, which is different from a statement. Okay, so that's this rising intonation. It's the same in terms of those elements. So, statements, questions, instructions, or commands. The only difference is that BM has less pitch variation. English has many. So I think BM it depends on the word order. Yeah? Awak pergi mana semalam? Where did you go last night? Where did you go last night? Or where did you go last night? Or where did you go last night? So the differences. But those are very simple examples, of course. As you progress in your language use, you will find that, more and more variations happen in English. And it's not just about grammar and structures, but also pronunciation. Okay. English has vowels, so does Bahasa Malaysia. But the difference is between English and BM is that, we have short vowels and long vowels. English has diphthongs, which is like when you say stay, S-T-A-Y, stay. Yeah, it's not star or stare, it's stay. The diphthong actually it has a dip in the sound. So we have long vowels and short vowels. When a Malaysian speaker speaks English, though, sometimes they are not aware of these differences. And so words like pool, as in swimming pool, pool, P-O-O-L, as opposed to pull. Yeah? So pool, of course, is the long vowel, and pull is the shorter one. However, if you're not aware of this, you might say just pull for swimming pool, yeah, instead of swimming pool. Okay, and I think as vocabulary, gets more and more difficult, the pronunciation sometimes it's not even the way it's spelled. Remember, I mentioned in the previous session that English is not a spelling pronunciation language. So words are not pronounced the way they spell. That doesn't happen most of the time. Yeah. So if you have caught, C-A-U-G-H-T, caught. Caught is not a long vowel, it's caught. But it's spelled C-A-U-G-H-T. But it's pronounced like caught, like K-O-T, that sound, yeah? And that has to do with a vowel sound too. And sometimes Malaysians, instead of saying caught, they may say caught or caught. Those are distinctions. So sometimes short vowels are lengthened, like pull and pull. Sometimes long vowels are shortened. Okay, so that's one. And diphthongs are words like, as I said earlier, stay. Now steak, the steak that we eat, yeah, S-T-E-A-K. In English, it's a diphthong. It's steak. Steak. The first part is like stay, and then with the k sound, steak. But if you are not fluent or you are not aware of this, and I have heard Malaysians say steak, okay? Steak or steak, rather than that sound. There are so many words like that. Those are all diphthongs, yeah? So what happens is that Malaysian speakers who are not familiar or are not aware of these differences, they will treat all vowels the same, meaning similar in length, okay? But when in fact English has long and short vowels. Of course, we have mother tongue interference. We always say that, yeah? In linguistics, we say mother tongue interference. And we say, sometimes we label it L1, L2. So L1 is your first language, your mother tongue. If you're Malay, Bahasa Melayu is your mother tongue, yeah? If you're Chinese, your mother tongue may be Cantonese or Mandarin or whatever it is, yeah? Or any other dialects. And if you're Indian in Malaysia, your mother tongue is either Tamil or some variation of that. So it appears as if you are not able to pronounce words, the correct way because of your L1. And it is a valid reason, okay? Because your mouth or your tongue is not used to the way words are pronounced in the other language, in this case English. So we have cases where words like sad and sad, S-A-D, is the same sound as bat and can, B-A-T or C-A-N, can. These are, instead of saying it the English way, we say it the Malay way, right? Instead of saying sad, we say sad or can. It's the influence of the L1. It's all about the sound. There are instances where instead of saying and this is not easier, the word petrol, as in petrol, as in the fuel, yeah, that we put in our car. Either P-E-T-R-O-L. It is actually pronounced in English petrol. Well, I've heard petrol, but petrol is, so then instead of that sound, petrol, it becomes petrol, which is then the influence of the mother tongue as well. So instead of the weak syllable, it becomes, you pronounce every sound, which is, not supposed to happen in the English language. And then there are what we call epentheses. It doesn't matter that you know that. It's called epenthesis. What happens is that you add in one or more vowels into the word between consonants. So words like plan, yeah, P-L-A-N, plan, becomes pelan, or film, I think I mentioned this before, becomes film. Well, brother, I think there are two things going on there. One is the inserting the vowel becomes brother, rather than brother. Also, it is the fricative, isn't it? Brother, like mother. So sometimes I've heard people say brother. It's the same with Japanese, by the way. The Japanese, instead of saying street, which they can't say, S-T-R-E-E-T, street, they say sutorito. Well, so the Japanese have more vowels than the English language. And so Bahasa Malaysia is the same. You tend to insert vowels in between what we call consonants. Okay? So there are many instances like that. The other thing is we have deletion. Now it's deleting instead of inserting. You delete some consonant sounds. Instead of epenthesis where you insert, it's called elision, meaning you delete final sounds. Words like first. First you must put in the milk. And first is a difficult word, especially if it's used in the first position, right? So instead of first, it becomes first. Instead of understand, it becomes understand. So you delete the final sound. And it happens when you speak in a sentence, not individual words. So you say, I can understand it quite well, but instead of saying, I can understand it quite well, you say, I can understand it quite well. Not even quite well. It's difficult, yeah, for some speakers. So what happens is that we delete or we remove that sound, the end sound. Those words which have fricatives at the end, those are quite difficult. First, most, yeah, cat, bat, book. Those are fricatives where the sound has to be sounded, but when we speak Malaysian English, we don't make the sound. Yeah, can I borrow your book? Like that we say. We say, can I borrow your book rather than your book? Or can I go first rather than can I go? So can I go first, not can I go first? Those are, I know, they seem like it's not so important, but they are. And the simplification of final consonant clusters, and this is difficult. Yeah, words like crisps, I know it's difficult. CRISPS. Crisp, I think that's American say crisp and British say chips. Or maybe it's the other way. Yeah. Help is common. Help because there are two consonants together, L and P. Help. Help. Sometimes people say help. Sometimes people say help. You don't hear a sound is missing, yeah? So those are difficult, yeah? Metric card or metric card. Students have metric card, yeah? They use it to enter, to get into the university, or they're given a metric card to use it for food or something like that. Metric is just MATRIC card. Some people say matrix card. It becomes matrix instead of metric. Okay, so these are examples of how some final consonant sounds are removed from the word. And so pronunciation becomes a bit different. Oh, and this is quite common, and I think it's in one of our list of 13 items. We drop final consonants. Seems quite similar to what I mentioned earlier. However, these has to do with a little bit of grammar. Past tense markers are very common. So words that end with D or ED, I can think of the ED is quite common. Okay, booked, lifted, but this is the D sound. Lifted is not a good example. Climbed, yeah. So the D or the ED sound, because they are past tense, you add the D or ED. But when you speak, sometimes that sound is dropped. So people don't really know. When you write, though, it becomes more difficult when you write, because when you don't put the past tense, then you don't know whether you mean now or in the past. Now, people do say that the way you speak, you might end up writing the way you speak. All right, plural forms is the same. The words that end with the S, yeah, most of the times I have seen, most of the time, or there are many times when I have seen or heard people drop the S sound, although the word is plural. Okay. the question is always, are these grammatical errors? Does this have to do with the sentence that you make, or is it pronunciation? Is it writing? Is it speaking? Speaking and writing especially, because they are what we call productive skills. It's what we produce. Are close. They're different skills, yeah? But as I said just now, sometimes you end up writing the way you speak. Because you speak that way for so long, or you've been speaking that way for so long and you speak it that way all the time, you end up writing. Maybe not in an essay, you might be a bit more careful when you write a long essay, yeah? But I have seen where my students have made those errors because they tend to speak that way. Okay, so is it grammar? Is it word structure? Well, it is a combination of everything. But let's be clear that speaking is different from writing. Okay, when you do it though, when you speak, when you write, there's grammar involved, of course. There's pronunciation when you speak. There's grammar and structure and syntax and all that involved when you write. A few more items on the use of consonants, when we speak. There are different things that we do when we pronounce words which contain, well, all words have consonants and vowels, but where consonants are concerned, we have a lot of issues sometimes with consonants. The vowels are easier to deal with. So there's something called replacement of consonants. So we say, words like, actually words that have the p sound, like Pacific, the Pacific, right? It's quite difficult for some speakers, and so instead of saying Pacific, they say Pacific. Specific is even more difficult, right? Because it's got this S sound before the P. So it's specific. And so because it's difficult, then we tend to make it easier for us to say it. So we replace the sound with, instead of saying Pacific or specific, we say Pacific. Of course, telephone is common, yeah? And so instead of saying telephone, we might say telephone or something like that, because that first sound is also often replaced. Okay, there are many sounds that, the difference between the d sound and the t sound is very common, yeah, in English words, and we make the errors there. So this, that, they, which is the sound, becomes this, that, or they. It becomes the d sound, right? Instead of the. It's hard, yeah? And the third sound, think, thing, or thank, as in thank you, becomes think, ting, ting, and thank. So we replace that th sound with the t sound. So these are consonant sounds that are either replaced, sometimes removed. And finally, what I want to point out, but this is not, it's not something that people know or are aware of, yeah? In English, there is such a sound as what's called an allophone, which is actually the sound in the initial position, meaning the first sound of the word. So like pin, P-I-N, pin, simple word, pin, a slight plosive sound, that's what we say, it's got pin like that. Or tin, or kin, yeah, next of kin. It actually has a slight sound, right? After the p and the t and the k. But because we are not used to that, instead of saying pin, we say pin. The p is then pronounced, yeah? We say, instead of saying tin, we say tin. and we say kin rather than kin. I know the difference is very slight, but when you start speaking and you make sentences, right? And you're speaking in sentences and you're speaking to someone, these sounds will become more and more prominent to the listener. Okay? Thank you.